Welcome to another edition of CU Sports Mag. I'm Aaron Sullivan, and joining me on the desk is the always handsome Steve Nelson.
Thanks, Aaron. Your blouse matches your eyes perfectly, as usual. We've got a great show ahead of ourselves. The football team is heading to Alabama this weekend to take on the Crimson Tide. We'll tell you how we expect the women to play in that match.
That's right, and we're looking back at the downhill freestyle longboarding team's stellar season.
It was an amazing season, Aaron.
April Fools!
Let's actually get started with some basketball. After missing out on March Madness last season, the men's basketball team made it back to the dance. 2 weeks ago, they faced off against UConn in Des Moines, Iowa. Despite playing well and establishing a lead in the first half, our Buffs slowly watched that lead disappear towards the end of the second half, ending with a score of 74-67 and sending the Buffs back home.
Yeah, it wasn't quite the finish everyone wanted for Josh Scott's senior season, but an overall season record of 22-12 is nothing to be ashamed of. With Scott's departure, Tad Boyle is on the search for new leadership next season.
The production we will replace. The leadership that Josh Scott gave this team this year is the biggest concern I have as we move forward. How are we going to replace that? Who are the guys that are going to step into that role?
Head coach Tad Boyle announced on Wednesday that Trayshawn Fletcher and Kenan Guzangic will not return to the CU men's basketball team next season. Fletcher averaged 7.1 points and 2.4 rebounds this season. He was fourth on the team with 35 three-point field goals, and he also hit 83% from the free throw line. He had 88 career games with the Buffs. Guzangic played in 13 games as a freshman, averaging over 4 minutes an outing. With that, he had 8 non-conference appearances. Coach Boyle said, after meeting with Kenan and Trayshawn individually, both felt they would be best served by finishing their collegiate careers elsewhere.
The men's basketball team will join Texas, Notre Dame, and Northwestern on November 21st and 22nd in Brooklyn, New York. Before heading to the Big Apple, the 4 teams will each play a game at their school in a regional matchup, and then will head to Brooklyn to play each other. Eastern Washington, Bryant, Monroe, and Seattle are the 4 opponents for the regional games, and a full tournament schedule will be announced at a later date. You can catch all 4 of the games from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn on one of the ESPN networks.
Senior Josh Scott has been named to the National Association of Basketball Coaches All-District Second Team. This was the latest of a very long list of awards for Scott. During his time at CU, Scott helped make the Buffs 4 postseason appearances, including 3 NCAA tournaments. And he also led the Buffs this year with 16.3 points and 8.8 rebounds per game, while hitting 53% from the field and 75% from the free throw line. Congratulations, Josh. You will be truly missed.
The women's basketball team finished with a lackluster record of 7-23 this season. But there's still good news in the offseason. Here, with all the Buff spirit you could possibly squeeze into one person, is Sports Mag's very own Jess Maltneck, bringing us this week's edition of Buff Banter.
Hello, my name's Jessica Maltneck, and I'm here with this week's edition of Buff Banter. Although their season wasn't exactly what fans hoped for, the Colorado women's basketball team had a flurry of good news come their way this week. First, senior Jamie Swan is currently on her way to China to play for the United States national team. But the great news for the graduating senior continues. This morning, she officially accepted an offer to play professional basketball in Luxembourg next year. But we can't forget the rest of the team now, can we? 4 Buffs have been recognized by the Pac-12 for their academic achievement. Juniors Zoe Beard-Fales and Haley Smith received honorable mention for their 2nd consecutive year. And sophomores Zoe Corial and Brecca Thomas earned honorable mention in their first season of all-academic team eligibility. Haley Smith, a guard from Sammamish, Washington, maintains a 3.67 GPA in mechanical engineering. This season, she started 29 games, averaging just over 10 points per game and 5.7 rebounds. She also led the team in field goals and free throw percentage. Beard-Fales, the 6'1 forward from Hernan, Virginia, held a 3.4 GPA in advertising. She averaged just under 4 points in 27 games. Point guard Brecca Thomas owns a 3.34 GPA as a strategic communication major. In 30 games, she averaged 3.5 points. And last, our 6'4 center Zoe Corial carries a 3.28 GPA in psychology. She too played in all 30 games, starting in half of those, while averaging a couple of points per game. To be selected for the all-academic team, players must have a 3.0 GPA or better and appear in at least half of their team's games. To conclude, there's one more piece of exciting news left, but I'm going to let Aaron tell you all about that one. That's all we have this week for Buff Banter. Back to you guys at the desk.
The women's basketball team is getting a new leader for the squad. Athletic Director Rick George announced on Monday that the 8th head coach for women's basketball in the history of University of Colorado has been filled by Santa Clara University head coach Jara Payne. Payne previously led Santa Clara to its first winning record since 2008. She has signed a 5-year contract, but the hire is currently pending approval of CU's Board of Regents. Payne is extremely excited for the opportunity ahead.
But thank you for this incredible opportunity to be your next women's basketball coach. I'm excited to be at the University of Colorado. I'm excited to coach this women's basketball team.
Put away those phones, close your laptop, stash that Encyclopedia Britannica. It's time for this week's trivia question. There are few athletic honors higher than being asked to represent your country in international play with a spot on the national team. Later in the show, we'll tell you about a CU star who just received this honor. But first, we want to know, who is the first men's basketball player to be called up to Team USA in 2013? Stay tuned and we'll have that answer for you at the end of the show. Well, I hope that opening tomfoolery didn't scare you away, because we've got the lowdown on CU men's lacrosse coming up in just a few.
And we'll choke down the jokes long enough to tell you about another special player from overseas.
It's a great day, isn't it?
Yeah. Too bad your boat's gonna sink at 11:05.
Don't come closer. I have rabies.
Don't you wish there were warnings to protect you from life's risks? With diabetes, there is one. It's called A1C, a simple blood test that helps measure your risk of serious complications. Learn more at diabetesaA1c.org.
Hey, how's it going?
Sir, are you okay?
What? Oh, this? It's probably nothing. I'm sure it'll go away.
Go away? But, sir, that can't be good.
No, it's cool. Really.
Do you want a napkin or something?
Everything's fine. Thanks.
You wouldn't ignore this. So why ignore the signs of a stroke? At the first warning signs, call 911 immediately. Because time lost is brain lost.
Big dreams and good grades aren't enough to get into college. There are actual steps you need to take. Finding someone who can help is the first and most important. For the next steps, go to knowhowtogo.org.
Great things. Find out how a healthy lifestyle can help your child succeed.
Do you miss CU football? I sure do. And luckily, the annual CU Spring Game is right around the corner. The CU football team is looking to build on last year and get closer to their goal of playing in a bowl game. There are quite a few storylines going into the spring game, including how the arrival of co-defense coordinator Darian Shiverini is on his air raid scheme and how it will affect the offense sticking with their plan. Who will be CU's starting running back this season since the three-headed monster of Philip Lindsay, Patrick Carr, and Donovan Lee? There's also a question on who will be handling them the ball, as currently there is no starting quarterback for the Buffs with the injury of Sefo Lufau. Show up to the game on April 9th to see if any of these questions are answered and help kick off the 2016 football season.
35 years after being crowned national champions in the two largest polls in the country, the Buffs will face the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. In 1990, the Buffs won the AP poll and the Jackets won the UPI coaches poll. The two teams will face each other in a home-and-home series during the 2025 and 2026 seasons. These games are part of a series of non-conference games that the Buffs will play over the next 10 years. Folsom Field will be the venue for 2025's game before the Buffs head to Atlanta in 2026.
Colorado women's lacrosse fell to 7th-ranked Northwestern University last week, putting a stop to CU's 4-game winning streak. The Buffs allowed the Wildcats to score 4 goals in the last 5 minutes of the game, bringing the final score to be 11-6. The Buffaloes may be on their 3rd year as a program, but they were hoping to get their first ever win against a ranked opponent. While not satisfied with the loss, head coach Ann Elliott was still pleased with her team's persistence after trailing behind at 3 goals at halftime.
Colorado women's lacrosse will travel to California this weekend to face up against competitors UC Davis and number 10 ranked Stanford. The Buffaloes have won 5 of their 6 past games, and their only 2 losses have come to top 10 ranked teams. CU is going back to conference play after 7 straight non-conference games. Let's see how the Buffs will hold up against the Pac-12. We begin play at 4 p.m. on Friday against UC Davis and continue on Sunday at 12 p.m. against Stanford.
The Colorado golf team has an important player, and I'm sure the coaches are very happy they were able to recruit him from outside of the country. From our affiliate at News Team Boulder, Dallas Yaros has more.
Jeremy Paul's journey to Boulder took him over the Atlantic Ocean. Paul, one of the University of Colorado's best golfers, is from Viernheim, Germany.
I never really lived here, so this is the first time that I moved over here. And it was kind of challenging at the beginning. Golf, I mean, it's basically the same, but you just play here way more.
Paul came to Colorado 2.5 years ago, not only to play golf, but to get an education.
No, I came over here, that was my plan, to come over here to play golf and study at the same time, because in Germany we can only, if you want to start studying, you can basically not play that much golf anymore, because they don't have the system that they have here.
Jeremy had a 70.65 stroke average in the fall this season as a junior, which set an all-time school record. He is aiming to become the 7th player in school history to lead the team in scoring in 3 consecutive seasons.
You hit the long ball for show, but you putt for the dough. Putting has always been my weakness on the course, so I asked Jeremy if he'd give me a tip.
Oh, I think most important part is speed control. A lot of people underestimate the importance of speed on the greens. If you have a good speed control, you're never really far away from the hole, and if you have a good line, it increases the chance of the ball going into the hole.
Jeremy has been a true leader for this team, but the coaches did not know what they were getting when they recruited him all the way from Germany.
Came all the way from Germany, however many 5,000 miles away, and obviously he didn't know what to expect. Coming here, we didn't really know what to expect from him, and being so far away from home, family, friends, but he's done everything right.
Jeremy has meant a lot to the players who are incoming freshmen. He's an important part of making the team better as a whole.
I always see the younger guys asking him questions. What are you doing on your chip and what are you doing on your putt? And what are you doing to get better? I think that's what he's meant to them.
One of the professional German golfers Jeremy looks up to is Martin Keimer.
I've met him a couple times, and he's really nice, and he helps us with the national team with a lot of things, so that's basically, I would say, my German idol.
Even though the sport of golf is the same in both the United States and in Germany, there is different ways of becoming a great golfer in each country.
I feel like here's a higher importance of playing. In Germany, there's a lot of focus on technique when you grow up, which is nice because it gives you a nice basis for creating a nice, good technical swing.
Jeremy has had 22 rounds in the 60s and 41 rounds under par, which are both school records. He enters the second half of his junior season with 85 of 89 rounds played counted towards CU's team scoring. Dallas Yaros, News Team Boulder.
I could use a few tips from Jeremy to fix my golf game. You can also watch the News Team during the week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon.
The Buffs finished 4th place at Stanford's 48th annual The Goodwin Tournament. The Buffaloes were led by senior Philip Uhlberg, who finished in 9th place to help the Buffs get to a 4th place finish in the tournament. While close behind, junior Jeremy Paul placed 10th. The Buffs are 21-3 when playing Division I competition, and after this win, they improved their record to 87-41-1. The Buffs have 2 more tournaments remaining prior to the Pac-12 championships, which will happen a month from now in Salt Lake City. Let's go Buffs!
It's time again to name this week's Athlete of the Week. They are Philip Uhlberg of the men's golf team and Paige Soenek of the women's lacrosse team. As we mentioned before, Uhlberg led the team to a 4th place finish in Stanford's annual spring tournament. The Buffs actually finished in the front of 6 ranked teams. Paige Zoindick had 7 games against Northwestern and 6 saves against Michigan. The team now has a record of 7-2 with Soingson as the team's starting netminder. Way to go, Buffs! It's about time for another quick break, but be sure to keep those cheeks planted for some kickin' soccer updates.
Couldn't have said it better myself. In addition, Joe Paris and Cyrus Allen are in studio to talk about the future of CU football. It's all coming up after a short break.
This house was almost saved from a fire that was almost put out by neighbors who almost volunteered. As generous a nation as we are, sometimes instead of giving, we almost give. But almost giving is the same as not giving at all.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys are much too much. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're gonna beat them and bust them. Beat them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a dad today.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys.
He seemed fine to me. I thought he would just sleep it off.
I didn't think he was that bad.
I had no idea he was taking prescription drugs.
He only drank as much as me. I was fine.
We didn't want to get in trouble.
I thought this kind of thing happened all the time.
I thought someone else was taking care of him. If I would have called.
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 If I would have just called.
I'd still be alive.
Oh my god. What is she thinking? Her hair? Ew. No one likes you.
No wonder you don't have any friends.
You're so ugly and
Ew,
fat.
is she really wearing that?
Wow.
So she's so weird. Who wears that? That is so gross.
Oh wow.
Seriously?
Do you remember Nikki Marshall? If you do, you probably have been at CU for a while. Marshall has been added as a volunteer assistant soccer coach for the 2016 season. Marshall played 4 seasons at Colorado from 2006 to 2009 and is CU's all-time leader in goals scored, shot attempts, game-winning goals, and goals per game. Marshall led the Buffaloes in the best 4-season stretch in CU soccer history with 47 wins, 29 ties, and 19 losses. Marshall then went on to have a 5-year professional career before joining the Buffs. Let's hope she can spread that winning magic and help the team have a successful 2016-2017 season. Welcome, Coach Marshall.
Football season may be over, but the hype will never die. Are you ready for a double dose of something worth double taking? We've got it for you here with Cyrus Allen and Joe Paris. That's right, it's double team time.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Double Team. I'm Cyrus Allen here with Joe Paris.
Hi.
And now that spring football is back in the start of it, we're going to be talking about football for the CU Buffs. We're going to start off, Joe. Sefo got hurt last year. Now we have a few new quarterbacks. What do you think is going to happen with our quarterback situation moving forward in the offseason?
Well, thanks for having me, Cyrus. Sefo should probably redshirt this year. He's got a pretty bad foot injury, and it's one of those injuries that you could come back and get some time during the season. It's about a 9 to 10 month window on that foot surgery. But it's at the point where Derek Webb is transferring in here to Colorado. We don't need Sefo this year. He's got a lot of good football left in him. So I'm hoping he redshirts this year and is building on the future. And as a college athlete, that's a really responsible thing to do, but it's also a tough decision. It's another year that you have to stay in school. It's another year you have to deal with college lifestyle. And, Sefo may not have the NFL prospects that a lot of people see, but I know he believes in himself and he wants to go out there and prove himself. So it'll be interesting to see if Sefo will take the field this year. As of now, it doesn't look like it, but it's between him and Coach McIntyre, and we'll see who the starting quarterback is day one. I mean, there's a lot of competition right now. There's 4 or 5 guys vying for the spot.
Yeah, no, I've been going to practice. They have each of the quarterbacks taking reps, and it is hard to come back from that foot injury. It happened at the end of the year for Sefo, so it'll be interesting to see what he's going to do next year. And now to the weapons that a quarterback will be throwing to. We lose Nelson Sproof. He's a Biletnikoff finalist. How do you replace a wide receiver like that going into an offense in the Pac-12 where we need to produce against other teams?
Well, I think Nelson Spruce is a really good receiver. I don't want to take anything away from him, but the weapons that Colorado has developing in Bryce Bobo and Shea Fields are, in a sense, more valuable to the offense than Nelson was. And, Nelson was a great receiver. He really was. He'll end up in the NFL. He had really sure hands, but the thing that puts Bryce Bobo and Shea Fields aside from Nelson Spruce is their speed. Nelson was a guy who on third down you're throwing to because he has sure hands, but unlike Paul Richardson, he didn't have that deep, long threat with a lot of speed, and I think both Fields and Bobo will have the ability for Colorado to break open plays because there's a lot of telegraphed plays for the Buffs this last year, and I think having the ability to have players that can really break out and break out of the mold will be a different for the Colorado offense.
Yeah, I know. I've talked to some of the coaches. They said that Bobo has that breakaway speed that is almost unheard of on their team, and Shea Fields is someone who is coming into his own as a receiver. He's learning the route running, and he's becoming better. So now we have our offense set up. There's a lot of questions there. We have a defense that has some injuries coming back. We have Addison Gillum coming back. He's going to be a big play for us. But who else on our defense is going to help step up and try to stop the powerhouse Pac-12's teams, like for Stanford and Oregon? How do we stack up against them with our defense coming into the season?
Well, I think Coach Jim Leavitt, who's done a really good job with the defense, will only continue to improve things. When you look at the scores and the defense that Colorado played the last 2 years, if the Buffs can get about 5 to 6 points better on defense, meaning they allow, basically one less touchdown a game, I think they can win 7-8 games. Now, that's a lot to do. In terms of individual players, it's tough to say right now. There's a lot of holes, I'd say, in the defense, but I think there's a lot of pieces that coaches have to deal with. And Jim Leavitt, he's a top-class coach, and he knows what he's doing. So it's interesting to see what guys he takes into camp and how they play on, day one.
There were a lot of close games last year, so hopefully we can move forward and be better. But that's going to be all for us here at Double Team. I'm Cyrus Allen here with Joe Paris. Thanks, and back to you guys at the desk.
Thanks, guys. The track and field team started their outdoor season last Friday at the Thumb-McGraw Quadrangular in Fort Collins. They faced off against the Rams, the Wyoming Cowboys, and the Northern Colorado Bears. The Buffs won a few events at the meet, including the men's and women's 1,500-meter runs. Ryan Forsyth won the men's race, and Mackenzie Caldwell took home the women's title. The Buffs have a busy schedule this week, with meets in Austin, Texas, and at Stanford. We wish the team the best of luck this season.
The CU track and field team recently traveled to the less cool version of Boulder, Austin, where they competed in the Texas Relays. Sophomore Andrew Gazone started the final day of the decathlon in 16th place, but managed to maneuver his way to 10th by the end of the day. How did he do it? Well, let me tell you. Through 7 events, including impressive performances on the 10-meter hurdles and the discus throw, Gazone hammered in the day by setting his personal best record on the pole vault. Congrats, Andrew.
Blossoming flowers and everyone about to graduate aren't the only ones who are happy that it's finally April. After nearly a month of intensive practice, the CU women's volleyball team is itching to kick off their spring competition this weekend. Head coach Jesse Mahoney has been pushing the girls to make the final tweaks before their first matches against Wichita State and Kansas this Saturday, and aims to have them in ideal focus before they head to compete in Laramie, Wyoming on April 9th.
Registration has finally opened for the University of Colorado volleyball camps, which will run through July 6th to the 19th. There will be 6 camps in total for kids in 4th grade and higher. Descriptions, costs, and other information is available on cubuffs.com/camps.
We have to take one last break, but when we return, we'll have the answer to that mind-bending trivia question.
And Tanner Bergamo is keeping it caliente here in the Rockies with this week's Rapid Fire.
Rapid Fire is next.
I am a fever.
am a fever, I ain't born typical.
The odds of a child being in a fatal automobile accident are 1 in 23,000. The odds of a child being diagnosed with autism? 1 in 166. The odds say it's time to listen. To learn the signs of autism, visit autismspeaks.org.
This is a man who almost learned to walk at a rehab center that almost got built by people who almost gave money. Almost gave. How good is almost giving? About as good as almost walking.
I'm feeling a cool draft coming from somewhere in the studio. Oh no, it passed. That must mean Tanner Bergamo is somewhere in the studio. And that means it is time for Rapid Fire.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Rapid Fire. And let me tell you, this week is going to be muy caliente. Let's get right to it. Sunday, the women's tennis team takes on Pac-12 rival USC at 1:30 here in beautiful Boulder, Colorado. That's right, USC sits at second in the Pac-12 standings, so the Buffs will definitely have their hands full. Then come Monday, both the men's and women's golf team will partake in 2 separate tournaments to start off the week. The men will fly out to Arizona for the Wyoming Cowboy Classic, while the women will ship off to California. You know, where everyone from CU is from. Anyways, both squads look to leave the West Coast with positive results. And then finally, the lacrosse team hosts USC on Friday over at Kittredge Field. The game will air on the Pac-12 networks at 2 p.m. right before we film this little sports show. Well, yeah, that's all we have for this week's edition of Rapid Fire. If necessary, you can find burn ointment at the Walgreens on Pearl Street. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thanks, Tanner. I know you've all been yearning for the answer to that trivia question, and we finally have it for you. In case you forgot, we asked, who was the first men's basketball player to be called up to Team USA in 2013? And the answer is Spencer Dinwiddie. As a junior, Dinwiddie was one of 12 collegiate athletes to represent the U.S. in the Men's World University Games in Kazan, Russia. The team finished 3rd in their group and 9th overall. Dinwiddie was the only Pac-12 player on that year's team.
It's time to start speaking in the language of hashtag, which for many of us is just hashtag regular English, including me, hashtag blessed. Here it is, CU's biggest baller Josh Scott tweeted, "So next year's Buffs are about to be nasty. Just wanted to be the first one to call it. Haha, before any reporters do." Well, Josh, I'm sorry to break it to you, but I, a reporter, have been following Dallas Watson's career since he was a freshman in high school, and I've never even met him. Well, I know you haven't had enough of us just yet, but you're just going to have to hold off until next week for some more Sports Mag fun.
That's right. And definitely make sure to tune in because we only have 3 shows left. It's a travesty. Once again, I'm Steve Nelson. That's Aaron Sullivan. This is CU Sports Mag, and we'll see you next week.